Oh, hello, we're in John's Gospel, chapter 18. We're now well into the trials before the crucifixion, and today we'll read verses 28 to 32 from chapter 18, reading from the ESV. Then they led Jesus from the house of Caiaphas to the governor's headquarters. It was early morning. They themselves did not enter the governor's headquarters, so that they would not be defiled, but could eat the Passover. So Pilate went outside to them and said, "What accusations do you bring against this man?" They answered him, "This man were not doing evil. We would not have delivered him over to you." Pilate said to them, "Take him yourselves and judge him by your own law." The Jews said to him, "It is not lawful for us to put anyone to death." This was to fulfill the words that Jesus had spoken to show what kind of death he was going to die. So we see something of what a sham this trial was and the duplicitousness of the Jewish religious leaders. It says in verse 28, it was early morning. And they went to the governor's house. Now, the Jewish religious leaders did not enter the governor's headquarters, so they would not be defiled. Because remember when Peter went to Cornelius' house, God had to give him the vision 3 times to persuade him that it was a good idea to go into the house, which he did eventually do. But here, if you look at the situation, you've got these rabbis and high priests and what have you. They're trying to kill the Son of God. The very God they claim to worship. They claim to honour. They're trying to kill him. And they're being so fastidious about not entering Pilate's house or headquarters, because they would be defiled. It shows how religiosity, which all of us can get caught up in, whether you're in what we might think of as a very liturgical church, or whether you're thinking of a charismatic type church. If we're not careful, we can all get caught up in this sort of nonsense, where we'll be doing some gross evil, we'll be pernickety, trying to get some minor detail just right. Anyway, that's what the religious leaders were doing. And Pilate went outside to them. So the whole thing kind of shows that Pilate seems to be rather scared of them. He ruled as governor from AD 26 to 36, I think. Now, Romans were quite willing to put down a revolt if necessary, but they much preferred not to do so, not to have to do so. And the governor, they did not want to have riots in the regions they were in charge of. That would look very bad on them and would not do their reputation or future career any good. This is why Pilate kind of goes along with them quite a lot of the way. And then the religious leaders answer, "If this man were doing evil, we would not have delivered him over to you." All very haughty. So what do you think we'd do? Of course we only handed him over because he's doing evil. Maybe even pretending they're doing it for the good of the Roman Empire, which they definitely weren't. But Pilate's not taken in by them. We see throughout this that Pilate, in some ways, is quite astute. As he often realises, or at least part of the time realises what's going on. But he's also a very weak man. That he's not prepared to act on what he knows to be the truth. So initially Pilate says to them, "Take him yourself and judge him by your own law." He knows full well that Jesus really hasn't done anything against the Roman Empire. It's just a religious dispute, as far as he can tell, amongst the Jews. And then we get the real reason why they brought him to Pilate. It is not lawful for us to put anyone to death. They want Jesus dead. And they weren't allowed to do that under the Roman rules. The last bit says, this was to fulfill the words that Jesus had spoken, showing what kind of death he was going to die. Now, what's going on here? What it is? Well, if the Jews hadn't put Jesus to death themselves, it would have been by stoning rather than being crucified. So in a sense, it had to be done, the actual deed had to be done by the Romans themselves. So afterwards, Jesus is going to have some conversations with Pilate, some of which we'll read about here in John. Sometimes people ask, how did the disciples or apostles know the various details we get? I mean, the answer seems very obvious. They saw Jesus after the resurrection, so Jesus could tell them all that was happening. And they could no doubt get some from other sources as well. But they really see no problem with them knowing what was going on.